This is Autoline After Hours with John McElroy and Gary Vasilash, episode 542 for February 4th of 2021. Cadillac Blackwing, the pinnacle of piston power. Watch Autoline After Hours live at Autoline.tv every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 12 p.m. Pacific. You can subscribe to this podcast for free by searching for Autoline in iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey.
Gary.
John, how are you?
You're going to stump me today?
Probably not. Although, okay, it'll be two acquisitions, okay, separate acquisitions. One happened in 1922 and one happened in 1970. Now, I'm going to guess you're going to get the 1922 one.
Acquisition in 1922.
In the auto industry.
I'm going to guess Chrysler got Dodge. No?
No.
No. Oh, another guess. Ford got Lincoln.
Exactly. That's the one I thought you were going to get. Okay, now.
No, wait. Let's hold on that just 1 second. Because if you've ever seen a picture of Henry and Edsel Ford sitting down with Henry Leland and his son, signing the contract where Henry Leland was selling the Lincoln Motor Company to Henry Ford, the Lelands look like they just were told they were about to step onto the gallows. And Henry Ford looks like he just ate a canary. He's grinning from ear to ear because there was some bad blood between those two going way back earlier in their careers. And I'm hazy on the details, but Leland had sort of pushed Ford out of an earlier pre-Ford Motor Company. And so for Henry, it was wreaking revenge of buying Lincoln. And remember, Henry Leland's the guy who started Cadillac and then went on to start Lincoln, and then Ford bought that from Leland. So anyway, and the second one, 1970, that's got to be when American Motors bought Jeep.
Oh my gosh, you're 2 for 2. Good for you.
Well, I was lucky.
I think you're smart. All right, let's bring in Chris.
Chris Paukert. Roadshow by CNET. How you doing there, Chris?
I'm great. How are you guys?
Good. So would you have guessed those acquisitions?
I think Lincoln and
Maybe
Ford
Jeep?
probably would have been second on my list, but actually I would have gotten the Jeep.
Yeah. I remember when American Motors bought Jeep. I mean, I was a kid at the time, but everybody went, what are they thinking? Are they stupid? Nobody's going to buy those vehicles.
And now look at it.
Look at it. That's right.
So it almost seems like that was a better acquisition than the other one, but maybe not.
Maybe. Who knows? Hey, let's get to our special guest for today. Tony Roma, Chief Engineer at Cadillac. Tony, great having you on the show again.
Thanks for having me.
So you came out with a couple of new cars this week, huh?
Yeah, there's been some stuff to talk about. Yeah, for sure. It was almost the perfect weekend. If we wouldn't have had that flat tire, maybe we could have been talking about the race win too.
Okay, so the CT4 V Blackwing, CT5 V Blackwing. Okay, so two separate cars that you guys have completely revamped. You've made them more than the V series that I believe we had you on the show for last time.
Yeah, that's right. We've expanded our V series. We talked about that a little bit last time. We've made it more accessible. Each of these cars, the CT4 V series has the 4-cylinder turbo. The CT5 V series has the 3-liter twin turbo. We offer both of the V series models with all-wheel drive now. That was a big criticism we've gotten in the past. These Blackwing models are now the pinnacle of performance, right? This is the ultimate expression of our track-capable full-in model. They're the spiritual successors to the ATS-V and the CTS-V that we talked about last time I was there. So these are the ultimate performance sedans from Cadillac.
So I'm sure it's a lot of fun to work on vehicles that are like this, that are so, passionate and high performance. But what's the importance to the brand? Why do these types of vehicles?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And we've been doing these for almost 20 years now. We're coming up on our 20th anniversary. And it's important for the brand for relevance, frankly, in the modern world, right? Luxury has evolved over the years, and there's a certain element of it that is performance. It shows our engineering prowess. It shows that we understand what our customers are all about. And it's important as the pinnacle, at the top of the halo for these cars.
Tony, where do you think you guys stand right now in that regard? As you know, it takes a couple of decades to change public perception around, and that's if you nail everything right. The V Series from the get-go were always good. But as you know, amongst the German crowd, it was like, yeah, it's good, but it's a Cadillac. Where do you think that perception stands now?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've been involved with V Series. There's only a couple of us left that have been here since, before it was even called V Series back in the day. Yeah, I agree. When we started, it was the first gen CTSV was a great car at the time. I don't know if it's aged that well, but it was a good first step. The second gen, I think, is when we really gained a lot of credibility. I know when I would talk to my counterparts from the German car makers or from suppliers, they all kind of raised an eyebrow. I think that the third one, the CTSV, was really that was a car we really, just basically got to put out there and say, here it is, and everybody expected it. That was really the first time that there was the buzz around. I guess maybe that's the way I should have said it. The first time was, wow, look what Cadillac did. The second time was, oh, they did it again. The third time was really the first time that there was a lot of interest before we launched the car, and a lot of people trying to get spy photos and things because people expected it and were excited about it. And I think this time falls into that category again. I think people, we sold out the CT5V Blackwing. The 250 units we did as our pre-order sold out in less than 3 minutes. So we had 250 people within 3 minutes give us $1,000 deposit, clamoring to get one of the first ones. And within 24 hours, we had over 1,000 deposits for that car. And that just shows you that there's a lot of people that were excited about what we're doing, and what we did resonated with them.
Well, Tony, to talk about excitement a little bit, so you talked about the V versions of these cars, just the straight V. Mm-hmm. And so, you had the one car with 310 horsepower, the CT4V, mm-hmm. and the CT5V with 335. Now, with these Blackwings, you've bumped it up to 472 horsepower for the 4 and 668 horsepower for the 5. I mean,
right.
It's a hell of a bandwidth. What were you guys up to?
Well, I mean, yeah, the bandwidth on these cars, and that's one of the challenges, right? To go all the way from the 2-liter turbo on the one end all the way up to a 668 horsepower, fire-breathing monster that goes over 200 miles an hour. It's one of the challenges, frankly, that all of us engineers enjoy about doing these cars.
So these are, they're high-tech, modern cars inside and out, except you've taken an interesting decision that the standard transmission for both of these is a manual. Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of manual transmissions, as I know the other guys here are. But if you could explain to me and to the audience why that's important, and why you keep doing that when there's so many other companies that are starting to pull away from that.
Well, I guess I'd kind of flip that around. I think part of why we're doing it is because other people are not doing it anymore. And it's really one of the things we talk about internally here is we want to build the cars that we want to drive, the cars that resonate with enthusiasts. There's a lot of us in the company. And frankly, a manual trans, even though they're not faster these days, when I started as a trans calibrator way back in the day, the auto trans was sort of looked down upon and everybody wanted the manual for real performance. These days, I think it's pretty universal. Our 10-speed auto, performance-wise, if you told me to go to the track, that's the one I'd bring. But there's a very visceral connection with the car, with the manual trans, and just being that much more involved in the process of driving. And I think that fits kind of what the purpose of these cars are. These cars are emotional, right? They have a soul, they have a personality, and the manual trans just accentuates that. And this time we're able to offer it on the CT5 with the V8, which I'm thrilled about. It's going to be a unique product in the marketplace, and we've heard that from everybody. Everybody's excited about it. So now I just need them to go out and put their money down and buy some.
Tony, you're so right. I mean, yeah, automatics are faster these days, especially, but it's not as satisfying as when you're heel and towing and rev matching on your own. I know these cars can rev match for you, but there's a satisfaction in being able as a person to command a machine, you know, to make the machine do what you want. And the reason I'm coming up to this is you guys have said in your press releases and the like, you dedicated attention to getting heel and tow right. Because so many companies put a manual transmission in their car, and then you got to break your ankle trying to heel and tow on it.
No, that's right. And it's vehicle integration, which is something that I think we do as well or better than anybody. And getting down to pedal spacing, the offset between them, you can adjust the gain of the brake pedal now in the different modes. We have a different throttle progression in the different modes. So when you go into track mode, it's easier to heel tow when you're braking harder. When you're in sport, it's maybe more comfortable when you're just driving on a back road somewhere, when you're not, you know, as deep into the brake pedal. Trying to pay attention to all those little teeny details that just to make that connection with the car that much more comfortable. You know, one of the things we use, one of the sayings we use is, you know, the car knows me, right? That it's my co-conspirator is another term we've used, right? That's the feeling we want you to have when you drive these cars, right?
Hey, and we've got a follow-up from one of our viewers watching right now. Eric Almeida wants to know, possible that this manual will go into other GM cars?
You know, the days of the manual transmission are limited, and I don't have any news for you on where else it'll go. I'm just excited that we were able to do it in the Blackwings this time around.
So you have those magnesium paddles, though. I mean, on the automatic. Come on, I mean, people have to like that.
They're cool, and I love them. And there's a time and a place for that. And you know, yeah, the 10-speed is well done. I don't want to not spread any love on that. You know, the upgrade. You know, last time around we had the 8-speed automatic, which was great. Shifts quickly on track, especially, was wonderful. This 10-speed, if you haven't driven one in any of our other products, is just outstanding. The ratio drops are so small. It makes a great car.
You mentioned obviously the manual is a point of differentiation when a lot of other people are walking away from it in these segments. Very often I hear that automakers, the engineering team tries to, you know, pick a couple of categories that they feel like they can win in against the competition. What are those categories for this car? What are the things that the special sauce that it does particularly well?
Yeah, that is a great point. And one of the things we've always done on V Series is, you know, we use the racing term. We decide who we're going to put on the trailer, right? Who are you going to beat? Send them on the trailer pack and to go home. And so we pick one of our competitors and we say, okay, what do we do better? Because you can't pick everything, right? You can't cherry pick and be fastest and quickest and best lap time and cheapest and so on and so on. These cars are about precision. We've worked hard on the structure, 40% stiffer structure, the latest gen MR. We talked about the manual trans. It's about that pure driving experience and I know these vehicles are relatively heavy, but they feel light and nimble. When you drive them, especially, everybody, if you watched the thing we did with the pro drivers down at Daytona, they all got out of the car just blown away with how light and nimble, especially Kevin Magnussen when he got out. He literally said, I expected this thing to be a boat. Look how big it is. So I'd say that's the one thing, if I could pin it on, these cars are light, nimble, and precise. And all the things that we've done for vehicle dynamics and everything is all about getting the most out of that. And that's why we don't do all-wheel drive, because those aren't terms you normally use, you know, with an all-wheel drive car. The way you make speed, the way you connect with the car in that case is different. And so that's why these are rear wheel drive. That's why we offer the manual trans. So good question.
Tony, we got another question here from a viewer, Chuck Grenchey. He's going to ask the question here that everybody's wondering about, the Blackwing engine. You had an engine branded Blackwing in the CT6, and now everybody's wondering, any chance of that engine ever showing up in the current Blackwings?
Well, you know, we actually studied that quite heavily. That engine was designed for a different product, right? It went in the CT6. That's a different engine. The front end architecture was different. It was a hot valley V, right? So the turbos were up high on the engine. we looked at that for both of these products, and it really wasn't the right choice, right? The two engines we chose were the right answer. Never say never, but I wouldn't hold my breath that engine's making a comeback. We've really pivoted. In case you haven't noticed, Cadillac's talking a lot about the direction we're going in.
Yeah,
I wouldn't hold my breath.
Yeah.
To that end, what's the bandwidth for Blackwing? Because the industry is obviously moving toward electrification. It's moving toward SUVs. You've got some nice SUVs, especially the Escalade lately. Does this high performance brand extend beyond sedans?
Yeah, obviously today, and then we don't talk too much about future, but I can give you the answer to your question generically. The V Series lineup has expanded. We've talked about that. We talked a little bit about what we did on the sedans. You're going to see more of that in the future. We're going to do more V Series. It'll be more, it's important to our brand, and you'll see it on other products. Blackwing is reserved for really the pinnacle, the purest expression of performance, track capability, and that's what it's going to stand for going forward. So these won't be the last Blackwing cars that we do, but you won't see one on every vehicle. It's not appropriate. I couldn't imagine doing an Escalade V Blackwing, right? Maybe we do an SUV V, maybe we do an Escalade V, who knows, right? But the Blackwing is going to be reserved for something, like you mentioned, right? Hey, the one car, I think you start down at 200 horsepower and you crawl all the way up to, more than 3 times that much. That's something dramatic. That's what you'll see out of a Blackwing in the future.
Hey,
Tony, could you
sorry, go ahead, Gary.
No, I was going to say, Tony, you mentioned that the vehicle is 40% stiffer. Now, is that 40% stiffer than the regular V? And is the regular V proportionately stiffer than the base CT versions?
So no, it's not. It's 40% stiffer than the last model, right? So versus like a CTS. They are stiffer. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. Then we do things to stiffen the vehicle up over the standard V Series. It wouldn't be as much as 40%. It would be a smaller increase, but that's more a reference to the last gen products that we did.
Hey, let's talk brakes, because as I was going through the specs of this car, I was wowed with the ceramic brake rotors that you can get, because you guys are claiming a weight savings of 63.5 pounds. That's a whopping amount of weight reduction. I got to believe it's all unsprung. I mean, it's got to be a noticeable difference in driving.
It is noticeable, and it's Brembo's CCB technology, and yeah, we were finally able to find the right spot, because we've gotten that question a lot over the years of, hey, how come you don't do this? And we wanted something we wouldn't have to limit top speed. We wanted weight savings. You want the performance. You need the noise. It's got to be all of it, right? This is a luxury car, and we're really excited to offer this. And it is noticeable, especially on track. It's really noticeable what it does for you. And it's all obviously rotating and unsprung, which is, as an engineer, that's the holy grail, right? Yeah. Every gram you can save there.
So what was the toughest thing to get right? The calibration that eluded you for the longest time?
Well, we're still putting the finishing touches on everything right now. I don't know. Nothing really jumps out at me. It's always tough until it all kind of comes together at the very end. The one thing I can tell you we're just recently nailing down is finding the exhaust system that met all the legal requirements, that still had the right character and sound, and the woman that does the development for that for us really just knocked it out of the park. When you hear these cars, they're incredible and legal, which is always a good combination.
Do those exhausts augment the sound inside the vehicle with stereo speakers? Basically,
we do some of that. Most of what we do, is authentic. When you've got 6.2 liters of music maker under the hood, you let it do what it can. But the cars are so well isolated from the outside that it's always amazing, how it can sound like a pro race going on outside, but then inside it's quiet. So we do, and we've talked about this before. We don't make anything artificial. We accentuate the noise that the engine naturally makes, and that helps to let you turn it up and down. So in track mode, you can, when you've got your helmet on, we can boost it up a little bit so you can be better connected with the car. We also have variable exhaust valves now that we can tune how far they're open and when they're open. Previously, we've only had bi-state valves that either were full on or full off, and now we've got much better granularity on what we can do with the noise.
Tony, you mentioned saving weight. What are some of the things that you've done to do that? I noticed that there's like extensive carbon fiber aero work that you would do, but I mean, are there other things that you guys were up to on these vehicles?
Yeah, it's a pretty standard recipe, right? Aluminum panels in places and minimizing the bracing that you put, and you're maximizing the weight savings on your forged wheels. Really, these cars are more about not adding weight as you add performance, ironically, right? Because you start with all of our lesser cars are lighter than these, so you start by adding the big engine and a big transmission and a more capable driveline. And so it's really more about not adding weight, adding performance faster than you add weight, right? So,
and you guys are claiming a 200 plus mile an hour top end for the CT5V. That's right?
That's right. Yeah, we haven't actually finished the certification. There's still snow on the ground here in Michigan, so we'll run the actual physical test that says, hey, we're good. We've had the cars, we've run them that fast. We know it's faster than a CTSV, which was I think we ran 201 down at TRC with that. So yeah, we'll have the exact number later, but and like I've said before, and other OEs have talked about, that doesn't happen by accident, right? Just because you put a big engine in a car, there's a lot of attention to detail to make that happen.
Yeah, let's go back to the aerodynamics as well, because you've got removable pieces. Is this for different setups at tracks and the like, or what?
No, it's configurable, right? So when you order the car, you pick which configuration you want. We don't have anything that's removable or tunable by the customer.
Okay.
So,
okay. Then another question, 3D printing. These obviously are very low volume vehicles. Is this an experiment as to what you can do with 3D? Are you just taking advantage of the fact it's low volume, or where are you going to take 3D printing?
Yeah, the 3D printing thing, this is way more than an experiment. I really view this as the beginning of a new age, especially for GM and the whole industry. But for us specifically, we use these products to help go through not the unglamorous side of the business, right? All the validation and PPAP and all of those things that everybody freaked out about. How do you do this on a 3D printed part? And so we've done that on, again, right, not very glamorous parts, but a couple of the ducts that go inside the console on our low volume manual trans sub options. So you can imagine these are not high volume by anybody's standards. And you don't want to, you'd have to pay the same money to tool that duct that you would for the high volume variant. So that was a great application. And then the other one is the metal shift knob that goes on top of the manual trans shifter, and it's pretty neat. It's got 3D printed details on the back for heat rejection, so you don't, when you touch it on a summer day, it's able to shed the heat away. Again, right, a really neat thing that you wouldn't have paid the money to tool that part with that intricate detail. So we've made a huge commitment to 3D printing. We've got a lab that we just finished that's up and online in Warren with all the different technologies and agreements with suppliers that make these machines all over the world. And we're full in, and I'm really excited that the V Blackwing project was able to help nudge that along for the rest of the company. So
do you see this as an engineering opportunity going forward?
The additive manufacturing?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm also the chief engineer on the Celestic, and I can tell you when the time comes, we'll be talking about that. And there's opportunities all over the car for low volume, and every day, every month, I can tell you, I meet with that team, and it's just the pace that they're moving and discovering new things. We're printing tools to cast items. A lot of what we're doing with additive isn't necessarily the end item. It's like I said, printing a tool or printing something that you make a stamping out of, or all these, it's opened up, unlocked the imagination of a lot of these engineers, and it's really exciting stuff.
So when you were talking about the ducting earlier, you hinted that the manual take rate is expected to be low. I unfortunately was not one of the people that put down the $1,000 deposit on one of these vehicles, so I don't know whether or not you immediately asked people if they wanted a manual or an automatic. Do you have any breakdown for those vehicles about where you expect them to land? And is that informed by these pre-orders, or is it just predicted take rates?
Good question. We did not ask if you were going to buy an auto or manual for the pre-order. This was more just get in line and tell us you want one. I'll tell you, historically, I don't know where the numbers are going to land. Historically, we've been in the roughly 25% range when we've offered both before on V Series. And ironically, I use this statistic, people are surprised. On the second gen V Series, when we had a coupe and a sedan and a wagon, the wagon was the highest take rate for manual transmissions, which is not necessarily intuitive until you think about who buys the wagon, and they're kind of the most hardcore. So we do expect that it'll be in that 25 to 35% range, so.
The residual value on those wagons, by the way, is amazing.
I know.
And speaking of that, we've got a bunch of questions here from viewers. Scott C. says, where's the Cadillac CT5 wagon?
Oh, yeah, we styled one as an exercise years ago, and unfortunately, look, it's not news to you guys. The wagon market globally has been heavily wounded by the SUV and CUV movement. So we continue to look at it. Never say never, but right now that's not in our portfolio.
Yeah. They just don't
can't
sell
3D print that.
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
I wish.
Take a while.
Going back to that shift knob, Kit Gerhardt wants to know, can you personalize them? I mean, as long as you're 3D printing.
Yeah, we've talked about that in the future. The step one was to get it done, validated, and in the car. So maybe in the future. Right now, that's it. Yeah, there's a good picture of it. Good idea.
Yeah, well, to paraphrase Mark Royce, if the customer's willing to pay for it.
Yeah,
anyway,
that's my question. How much would you pay, right?
Well, there you go. We can do a clinic right here on the show, I suppose.
There you go.
Dion Zanuski wants to know, what's up with the old style steering wheel? He says a car like this should have a flat bottom. What do you think?
Man, we've had that discussion. Yeah, I wonder if one of our studio guys paid him to say that. We constantly have that debate. I fall firmly in the camp of I like round steering wheels where they have we pay a lot of close attention to the cross section and how it feels in your hand. As you guys probably know, the flat bottom traditionally comes from a race car where you have clearance or some functional need for it. We chose not to do it, right? That wasn't what we were going for here, but there is a time and a place for it. That this isn't necessarily the right car for it.
Kevin F. wants to ask, can you elaborate on the no lift shift?
Sure. That's something we've been doing for quite a while. So with a boosted engine, when you lift, even for that moment when you've got to put the clutch in and change gears, it signals to the engine, hey, you don't need to make boost right now. So it spools everything down and even you're talking milliseconds when this stuff's happening. So our algorithm says, hey, if your foot stays on the floor and it reads the clutch switch and says, okay, you're shifting, you're pushing the clutch in, it signals to the engine, keep everything ready, and then it relies on you making a pretty quick gear change. And then when you let the clutch back out, the engine, the turbos, everything's still spooled up and ready, and it goes, and it can save you an appreciable amount of time. If you look at a lap time, I forget the exact number. We've studied it before. It's in the close to a tenth of a second. It'll pick you up if you do no lift shifts versus not on a relatively long track. So it all adds up, little bits here and there, right?
True power shifting.
That's right.
Let's see. We got another one here. Our viewers, man, they get into the weeds here. Right Knight 70 says, why did Cadillac not use the Alpha platform for the crossovers, allowing for V and V Blackwing versions?
Man, it's like your viewers have been in these meetings with me over the last number of years. We looked at that, yeah, that's a little far off from what we're here to talk about, but yeah, we've looked at it is all I can say, and we've chosen other things. So,
Tony, one other question too: are these Blackwing cars going to have a Blackwing badge? Because you had a pretty cool Blackwing badge for the Blackwing engine, right. Or are they just going to be V series badged?
They're V-Series badged, and then what you'll find is there's we'll call them kind of Easter eggs for the Blackwing specific things, right? So you'll see the Blackwing badge show up, but it won't be prominent. It's not. We're not really creating a new, outwardly facing sub brand, right? That's why we're not calling them the CT5 Blackwing. It's the CT5V Blackwing. So, yeah.
Is the ownership experience any different? Is the presentation when you buy the vehicle, or is there a driving school or special events or anything?
That's a good question. We do include the Spring Mountain Driving School on these vehicles. Yeah, as far as the ownership experience. There's a pretty healthy V Club that we've been fostering for the last number of years now. That's not exclusive for just the Blackwing customers, but really proud of the work that those guys have all done, and it's really growing all over the country. I met with a bunch of them in Daytona at the 24 last weekend, and they're among the most enthusiastic folks you'd ever meet. It's really exciting to see them. They get together and have track days around the country and all that. It's really cool.
Tony, do you see these cars as vehicles that people strictly take for track days, or they go to Kroger and some weekends they take it out and drive like bats out of hell?
I've met customers all up and down the spectrum over the years, to be honest. I've met people that wow, and I've met people that have two. They have one they take to Kroger and they have one they take to the track. So, and we love those people, right? We could find more. So it's got to do both, right? The whole idea, and we've used the term bimodal, right? The car's got to have that personality where it's comfortable to pick up somebody and go to dinner, and it's also got to have, push a couple buttons and you put your helmet on and go get some respect on the racetrack. It's got to do both. So, and our customers do both with them.
When you develop two vehicles like this, obviously completely different powertrains, but one is lighter than the other. It's nimbler and smaller in a way. Some of the specs, as far as performance go, the 0 to 60s and stuff, aren't that different. So I'm wondering, is there like any sort of rivalry that happens? You have two separate development teams. Is it the same team doing them both, or is there like a need to keep certain performance stats higher in the more powerful model, I would assume, and more expensive model?
That's funny, right? You can imagine the people, especially the development engineers at Milford, that tune these cars. Most of the group, I'll be honest, that works on these cars work on both, right? A lot of the people do both, and they understand the mission for each car. The couple of small, pieces where maybe like the ride and handling is done by two different people or something, they do have that healthy rivalry of, hey, mine's going to do this better, but they're really aimed at different. They're aimed at a slightly different person, right? Like you mentioned, the one is obviously smaller, lighter, more nimble, turbocharged. It's really intended for something different. And so it happens that the 0 to 60 is very close, but that's really just the nature of a rear wheel drive. The good news is we're traction limited, basically at 60 miles an hour. So, when that's the case, you end up about where we ended up, and that's it. Now stretch it out to a quarter mile or beyond, and that's where they show it the difference, right?
Hey, we're going to have to wrap this segment up, but I think this last question is a great way to end it. Eric Almeida wrote back to ask, how are engineers selected to enter programs to work with awesome products with Cadillac? He says, working in a V-spec car must be a dream come true.
It is, and we honestly handpick a lot of the people that work on these cars, right? They self-nominate, and we get a lot of people that come out of the woodwork and say they want to work on them. Some people we go approach. So it is really, and a lot of them have worked on other performance cars at GM. Some of the folks have worked on Camaro or Corvette. So, but we're always looking for the right car people. So like I said, I use the term self-nominate. If you're interested and you're part of the team, then put your hand up and we'll see what we can find. Nice.
There's Chris Paukert volunteering. I'm with you on that, Chris. And
just for the test drives, that's all.
And if you want somebody to try that 200-mile-an-hour run in the snow, I'll volunteer for that too. But Tony, Roma, thanks so much for coming on the show. Really cool products that you guys have got there. Really good.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks.
Congratulations.
Okay, we're going to take a quick commercial break right now. Give a shout out to our good friends at Bridgestone. All right, we're back. So, Chris, what do you think? V-Series. What's your reaction?
I've had a lot of good drives in V-Series products before, both on and off the track, and they're always a treat. As I mentioned, I'm obviously partial to the manual transmission, so I'm really pleased to see that is still a part of this. These feel like kind of the last hurrah, especially, Tony alluded to electrification and where they're mapping the future of the brand. But I think this is a really special send-off. The performance specs are unbelievable, and I hope they drive as well as they look.
Well, I'm with you on the manual transmission thing. I love driving a manual in a performance car. If I have to commute every day and stop and go traffic, no, I'll take an automatic. And I gotta believe too that what a lot of GM's thinking or Cadillac's thinking was, if you got a manual, man, for hardcore enthusiasts, that is like the good housekeeping stamp of approval, right? I mean, it gives you total credibility. And my guess is they're not going to make any money on this manual. Although the take rate was pretty good, he was talking 25%.
Yeah.
That's got to be the highest take rate in the industry for a manual, albeit on a low volume performance line. But still, what are your thoughts, Gary? Blackwing and manual, I guess.
Well, I mean, I when he said that 25%, I mean, it really, really surprised me. But then, to your point, the take rate or the total volume is comparatively low for a vehicle. I have a feeling that these are, Chris, you used the word last hurrah. I look at these as perhaps being, the final nod that they're giving to, we're Cadillac, we're performance, we're going to go out on top with these. And then, oh, by the way, we're going to have the Celestiq in the Lyric in all of these other electric vehicles. And, but just see where we came from.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. This is one for the faithful, people that have already been adherents to the V brand, and just in general, it's like a Roman candle send off. I think it's probably a good move, and whether or not they make any money on it, I mean, it almost doesn't matter. It's a passion project. There are things that engineers like to do, and also on top of that, when you're playing with small volumes, you can do things like we were talking about 3D printing and use those as proving grounds for other technologies that might filter into larger production vehicles.
But let me say one thing. I believe they are absolutely going to make money on these cars. I mean, this is why you do high performance vehicles. I don't think that they're doing this as even a break even. I'm just saying with a manual transmission.
Sure.
Most companies are dropping them because the take rate is so low.
Maybe they had some inventory and they needed to use them before they went all electric.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, what else is that gearbox used in? I don't remember which one that is.
It's a Tremec 6-speed.
Yeah.
Okay, so that could be used in a lot of different things. So
yeah.
Well, okay. So what kind of message though? I mean, so Cadillac comes out, with a car that has 668 horsepower. Pure combustion engine, right? Does it send a mixed message when they come out with, the commercial that they'll show on the Super Bowl where Will Ferrell will be driving the Lyric and talking about electric vehicles? I mean, isn't that going to sort of cancel something out there? I mean,
I'm sure some people will think that, but automakers, respectfully, because they are businesses, have to talk out of both sides of their mouth at the same time quite often, right? You have all these green projects, but what they're making money on is pickup trucks, right? And those are not the greenest solutions in the world, generally speaking. And they need those things to fund all the other future tech and all the electrification and all that. So I don't think that it's necessarily the wrong thing to do. But I also understand why, it's an easy nitpick if you're, somebody like a diehard Tesla fan, that you wouldn't understand why you haven't converted to all electric. But my answer is it's a business, and you make what people will buy and will make you money.
I would agree with that. And also Cadillac is still in a challenger status amongst luxury brands. The Germans still dominate. The V Series has absolutely gotten Cadillac hardcore credibility amongst performance fanatics, even those who might otherwise go to a Mercedes, BMW, or Audi or Porsche. And so I think the V Series has absolutely helped the Cadillac brand. But having said that, 99.9% of the people who see that Will Ferrell, Norway EV ad are going to be oblivious that the V Series even exists. So to your point, Chris, they've got a couple of audiences that they've got to get the perception changed around that Cadillac is absolutely a leader in luxury and a leader in luxury performance. And you're talking to two different constituents there.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair assessment. And there's obviously inertia changes that happen within automakers, and things ebb and flow. And I don't think we'll see very many of these types of efforts out of General Motors or most automakers. But I do think they're to be celebrated. And I think that we've seen in the past, as I mentioned, the CTSV wagon residual values, the resale values, are massive. They know where their core fans are, and those people will probably also turn around and buy an Escalade, and also probably buy, an XT5 or something like that. They're repeat performers. So those are the customers you want.
Yeah.
So it's Chris, you're almost describing the journalist dream, though, right? The wagon with a manual.
Yeah. Well, but there's
just like
you need the roll up windows, Gary, and you need the 2-speaker stereo, and I resemble that remark. Yeah.
So
Gary, you always pick a bunch of topics for us to cover. What's on your list today?
All right. So we got some of the sales this week, and they're pretty good. I mean, before the show, Chris and I were talking about. I discovered that in the UK, sales in January were down 39.5%. I mean, it's just like, holy moly.
Yeah,
and
big drop in Germany as well.
And here they were down about 3%.
Well, careful, because on a daily selling rate basis, it was about the same. They were actually up fractionally.
Yeah, it's really impressive how resilient the market has been to this point. And I think we're seeing in the UK, their lockdown has been a lot more intense and probably more strictly adhered to. So that's obviously going to cut into people's ability to shop. We're also spread out as a country all over the place, and people need cars to get places. And a lot of the people in the UK, they're more tightly packed, and there's better, infrastructure in terms of public transportation if you want to do that sort of thing during the pandemic. So I think some of that stuff has, effect. And there's also, financial and political uncertainty with Brexit still, the residual effects from that.
Right. So I was looking at the Ford numbers, and they were down by 8.3% overall. And there was a pair of numbers that maybe you guys can explain to me what's going on here. The Ranger, they sold 6,102 Rangers, okay, which was up 1.5%. But they sold 7,498 Transits, and that was down 32.5%. So the thing I'm curious about is that Transits are outselling Rangers? Why?
Well, look, the F-150 is a pretty brilliant vehicle, and they're not all that dissimilarly priced when you get into the higher equipment levels. I was just in the Ranger Tremor, which I can't talk about the driving experience yet, but they've already released pricing, and it's in the mid $40,000 range, which will get you a pretty nice F-150 at that point, with frankly a much more sophisticated interior. The fuel economy is not terribly dissimilar. And there's a lot more capability, and you have dealers that are still trained to say, why would you get in this smaller mid-sized truck when you can get this? So I'm not terribly surprised by that, but it is worth noting that the Ranger is now number 2 in the segment. It actually grew its sales last year. Granted that the Toyota Tacoma is the leader by, an order of magnitude. But Ford sold, I think, 120,000 Rangers last year. And the Taco is in the 2-something range, 230, something like that. But it's growing. And remember, too, that the Ranger was not a new vehicle when it came over here. It's tired on the inside. It does a lot of things well. And frankly, most of the mid-sized pickup trucks are tired on the inside. That's sort of that class. But I'm not terribly surprised that the Transit's outselling it. Business has to continue.
Yeah, look, I mean, the F-150 is Ford's North American franchise. The Transit is its global franchise. And they have so many sizes and permutations, wheelbases, hood lengths, or hood heights, or roof heights, I'm trying to say. And they're, other than the Mercedes Sprinter van in the US, which is more expensive than the Transit really doesn't face any direct competition. GM doesn't have anything like it. The ProMaster from Ram just never caught on like the Transit did. Ford makes a lot of money on the Transit. And that's why not only are they going to have an electric version of the F-150, they've got an e-Transit coming right on its heels.
Well, also look at what's happening during the pandemic with everybody ordering things and having them shipped to their homes. So you're seeing everybody wants to get into the commercial logistics business. I mean, look at what General Motors just announced with BrightDrop. Right. And how much action there is around, the Rivian Amazon van. And there's a lot of attention on the commercial segment right now. And I don't think that's going to go away. I think you're only going to see more and more of that.
See, it's interesting to me is that if you talk to Europeans, they think that Americans are fairly crazy who are contractors that buy pickup trucks, because they say, you've got that big open bed back there. Why don't you have a transit-like vehicle instead? And I wonder if perhaps we're seeing, because of the fact, as you point out, Chris, that there's so much deliveries from UPS and FedEx and so on, that we're going to see more and more people saying, hey, I'm a plumber. This would be better to have a transit than to have a pickup truck, or I'm an electrician, or even, various, carpenters, whatever kind of contractor you may be. It's a better choice just in terms of the architecture.
Well, as automakers expand their number of commercial offerings and their upfitting capabilities within these vehicles from the factory, and you can roll those into your monthly payment and all that becomes much more attractive. Whereas, you used to maybe just get a chassis cab pickup truck or something like that and then go to the aftermarket. Now, if you can go to one-stop shop and deal with your same dealer all the time and have that relationship and get those prices, you probably will. And we've seen that in the case of Ford, that they've dramatically upscaled the number of offerings that they have in the Transit range, and they will continue to do that. We've also seen other companies struggle mightily with that. Nissan has not done well with its NV lineup, but certain companies are definitely making inroads, and obviously there's going to be a lot of intense competition from the outside with, companies like Rivian.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of wrapping things into your payment, I noticed today that both Mack Truck and Volvo Truck, they're both the same company, are now beginning to offer insurance. And, Tesla started this back in 2019, and last November, General Motors announced OnStar insurance. Is this going to become a new phenomenon where automakers or vehicle manufacturers are going to look for other ways to derive revenue? And that would be, things like insurance?
100%. Keep in mind that a lot of that's data. And now that you have these constant connections to vehicles, you can see where and when people drive and how much they drive and how they drive. And there's a lot more of a movement afoot to have insurance rates based on those characteristics, not just paying a blanket rate because you are this age and you live in this part of the country and you're driving this vehicle, but because you drive on these days of the week and you tend to drive at this time and accelerate this hard and you've gotten into these kinds of accidents and that sort of thing. So I think data obviously is the big thing that all automakers and all companies seem to want more than anything else. And if they can do that, if they can keep you within that ecosystem, that's helpful. And automakers are seeing correctly, I think, that people are happy to subscribe to things. Now, they're not really happy to subscribe to cars yet, as we've seen. Most automakers have struggled mightily with that. But that drip of payment over and over and over again is really compelling. And General Motors has been in the forefront of that for a long time with OnStar, and they're only now really starting to tap into the capabilities of what telematics can do, in part because the cost of everything has come down, the speeds of everything have gone up.
So John, this is one of your favorite subjects, data monetization. And we also saw this week Ford and Google signing a partnership that Ford's going to start using the Android operating system for the vehicle. I mean, not just Android Auto, but the operating system is going to be built on Android. And they're looking for the opportunity to create all kinds of services that you'll be able to pay for. What's your take on that collaboration?
Two things. Number one, Ford's trying to do anything to get its stock price up. In fact, it's up quite a bit over the last year. I want to say like 27% or something like that. It's still nowhere where they want it, but it's higher than it had been before. And as you know, right now the market wants to know anything that a car company is doing that's high tech or electric vehicle or anything along those lines. So just Ford announcing it was doing things with Google gave the stock a pop. The other thing, which I found very interesting, I think it was Jim Farley who said it, this is going to free up Ford software engineers to go work on other things that Google would not be involved with in the development of a car or connectivity or anything like that, because the industry right now, it faces a dire shortage of software engineers. So I think there were two things in Ford's mind, get the stock up, free up engineers to go work on other projects that we just don't have the talent for. And there was one other thing I'm trying to think of right now that'll come to me in a minute. Anyway.
Well, I mean, doesn't it go back to the point that Chris was making about people like to have commerce and from their car? And I was looking that the Gardner group said that they're predicted that by 2023, in-vehicle commerce will be $1 billion. Okay. In 2020, they said it's $100 million. So, I mean, they're going to be this tremendous growth in just a couple of years. So I've got to believe that Ford is looking at this opportunity with Google to use the cloud to get some of these pay-for services.
Right. And that was the other point I was trying to think of. And I'm glad you mentioned the term billions, because that's what triggered my memory. Adam Jonas from Morgan Stanley came out and said, Ford could generate $9 billion a year with this connectivity and maybe put $5 billion of that on the bottom line. And he came to that by looking at Ford's fleet of vehicles. They've got 75 million vehicles out around the world. And he figured if they could make $10 a vehicle per month, it turns out to $9 billion a year. And he's figuring a 55% profit margin on that. So that drives $5 billion to the bottom line. Obviously, it would take years for Ford to get there. It's going to have to convert the whole fleet. But when you think of the potential, it's enormous.
Yeah, that's pretty remarkable. One of the things I wanted to know if you guys knew anything about, early on when we were looking at Google really trying to make headway in the automotive realm, even with just Android Auto, not even the operating system that runs dashboards and cars, but just in the infotainment systems. A lot of automakers would tell me, we're really reluctant to get in bed with Google because they want access to the whole car. And we just don't want to give that up. We only want them to have control or access to this particular portion of the vehicle. And I think a lot of them eventually sort of gave up because there were so many people clamoring for that feature that they sort of had to oblige. But I also wonder if maybe Google didn't, loosen its restrictions about how much access they had to have to everything if they became a better partner.
Yeah, that's a very good question. One of the big parts of this deal is the Google Cloud, and so there are basically three big players in cloud services. One is Amazon. The second one is Microsoft, and the third one is Google. The first two actually made money last year on their cloud services. Google didn't make money on its cloud services. So what was it, 2 weeks ago, we had General Motors make the announcement that they are working with Microsoft, will be using the Microsoft cloud. I have a feeling that perhaps, to your point, Chris, that Google is a little bit more receptive to perhaps not wanting so much, so they can begin to build some momentum for their cloud services.
Oh, that's fascinating. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, but I think that's a really good point. I also believe that the auto industry, because literally every single automaker has given up on trying to do this in-house. And I think it's just that they recognize that they just don't have the talent. They've got to convert their fleets to all electric. They've got to get into this connectivity. They've got to maybe get into mobility services. They just can't do it all. And I think they recognize that, geez, these tech companies have got it all. They can easily outspend us on all of this. Why don't we just have them do it?
All right. So speaking of tech companies with all that money and all that talent and all that capability, it's been rumored again that Apple's going to invest on the order of $3.6 billion in the Hyundai Motor Group. What do you guys think about that? Is it going to happen?
Well, it certainly sent stock prices through the roof over in Korea. People have been very happy about that. And I don't know if you saw, there was a report, I believe earlier today, that Apple lured away one of Porsche's, I think, vice presidents of chassis engineering for their Apple car project. Now, again, it's hard to know what any of this means yet, because they've done a very good job about keeping this tight-lipped. And I think, at one point the program sort of, it didn't get turned off, but, definitely
they let everyone go.
Yeah, and now it seems to be ramping back up again. But we don't even know what type of vehicle this is going to be. If indeed, it'll be something that you can purchase. Is it a service? Is it a commercial play like we were just talking about, with the vans and all of that, or is it something that you and I are going to be able to walk into a dealership or click a button and buy?
None of this made sense to me. The whole Kia thing. Kia is part of the Hyundai Group. Don't you think Apple would be talking to the Hyundai Group? And even if it made the mistake of contacting Kia, wouldn't Kia say, you better talk to the group people? And so it didn't make sense to me that they would be doing something directly with Kia. And by the way, that assembly plant of Kia's in West Point, Georgia, isn't it pretty much running flat out right now? Yeah. You're going to build 100,000, maybe going on up to 400,000 for Apple. I don't think that's going to happen in that plant. What I think makes a whole lot more sense is that Apple cuts a deal with the Hyundai Group, and it's handled through Hyundai Mobis, which is the in-house part supplier. And remember, Mobis Group already makes the rolling chassis for the Jeep Wrangler and the Jeep Gladiator. They've got an assembly plant right next to the Jeep plant. They put the whole rolling chassis together, roll it into the Jeep plant, and now Stellantis essentially drops the body on it, and bing, bang, boom, it's done. Wouldn't that, with a skateboard design, make a whole lot more sense that Hyundai Mobis would do something like that? Now, maybe you go to the West Point manufacturing site, which is enormous. They got acres and acres of unused land, and you've already got suppliers coming in and out of there. So you've got a logistics setup already there. I just don't think that this thing's going to go through with Kia. I think it's going to go through the Hyundai Group, and probably with Mobis at the head of the project.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that might not have just been, someone not understanding in terms of the way the group is structured. And so it's become, Kia versus, Hyundai Motor Group.
Oh, Gary, I have even more conspiracy theories than that. I think somebody tried to make a run on Kia stock, and link this out that, Apple's interested in Kia, and kaboom, the stock.
You haven't been on Reddit lately, have you?
I haven't what lately?
You haven't been on Reddit lately, have you? No, it's not a crazy thought. My big question still is, why does Apple want to get into the car business at all? The margins are terrible compared to what they're used to. But is it data again, or is it what is it? Is it battery technology and just wanting to have every facet of our lives, come with their logo? What is it?
I think it's for them to sell more of their software and services, and to take advantage of the entire digital ecostructure that they're building out. I mean, so you use your phone, you download music, you watch Apple TV. I mean, and it's just what else is a big part of your life? Transportation.
Yeah, I don't think they're interested in the car business at all. What they're interested in is people's time. And pre-COVID, the average commuter probably drove to work half hour, came back home a half hour. There's an hour a day Apple does not have access to people. Multiply that by millions of people. You have millions of hours every single day that now you can start capturing data for them, and throw that out through a year. I mean, the numbers get to be enormous. But what I think Apple is really interested in is being a competitor to Cruise or Waymo. and it's going to have its own robo-taxi service of connected cars. And if you believe the projections, that's where the real money is, not in selling an automobile, but in getting multiple users to use it over multiple years and getting a lot of money that way. I mean, you know, in the early days of Cruise, what GM was projecting was that each of those shared vehicles would generate at least $30,000 a year in revenue. Whereas, you know, once you sell a vehicle, you know, on average, GM was worldwide getting $30,000 for a vehicle, not $30,000 a year from it. And I think that's what Apple's after.
That wouldn't surprise me. And of course, we've heard Elon Musk talk about, you know, full self-driving and how that'll be monetizable for all the individual owners as recently as, I think, last year. So we're still waiting on that, Elon. But it definitely will be a fun thing to watch. I don't really envision Apple ever being a company that wants to own, to have a traditional dealer network, let alone franchises or anything like that. I don't really see that for them. That doesn't seem like the type of business they would want to get into.
But Chris, could you have imagined the Apple stores before they did the Apple stores? And I mean, and now they become these magnificent examples of architecture in major cities. And I mean, they become like, you know, the Louvre in Paris has, you know, got its Apple analog, and you know, so
they're beautiful. But what's the throughput on those physical brick and mortar stores, or brick and glass and, you know, architecture stores versus through the internet?
I think they do pretty damn well on those things, and the other guys. So you mentioned Tesla. So there's the recall of the Model S and X's with on the order of 135 to 159,000 vehicles, because the touch screens in these vehicles is not working as it should. And apparently, the reason these touch screens are not working the way they should is because the chip that is powering it is basically maxing out on memory. You know, so here's the thing that I wonder about as we, you know, we talk more and more about cars that become smarter and smarter. I just wonder, is the car the right place to have this really high technology when, you know, you have situations, if you have a Windows 95 computer and it breaks, you can't get it fixed. Are there going to be people who are going to be able to, you know, swap out chips in old Model S's? I mean, is this going to be a thing?
Well, Tesla won't let anybody work on their old stuff, right? If you have a vehicle that you crashed and has a salvage title, you can't connect to the supercharger network. They're very, very protective of their domain. And I would expect for that to extend, you know, to their infotainment systems and all those other things. What we're seeing here, we've been hearing reports of these failures for literally years now. And the understanding seems to be that those are not automotive grade materials. The entire touch screen, especially of early cars, they just didn't do their homework. They didn't listen to people that said, you have to do these tests and they have to be done to this standard. Because, you know, Tesla has always gone its own way. And most of the time it's largely worked out, actually. And they've innovated in so many different ways, but they're a very headstrong company in certain ways. And I think this is one of those areas where it's coming, you know, back to bite them. I wouldn't necessarily say that you won't be able to update old technology. I mean, Tesla's a pioneer in over-the-air updates that has, you know, dramatically extended the life of their vehicles. You know, you've got early generation vehicles that they end up eking out more range because they open up more of the battery packs. They get, you know, downloaded new programs and all that to keep those driving experiences vital in a way that nobody else was doing before. And they deserve a lot of credit for that. But what they don't deserve a lot of credit for is not doing their due diligence on automotive grade componentry. Well, so, I mean, I look at it from the point of view of, okay, if I have a PC running a Pentium chip, it's not going to be capable to the extent that, you know, a current generation Core processor from Intel is going to be, right? So there's only going to be so much you're going to be able to do with technology that is being wired into cars today. Technology that was wired into cars 2 years ago.
I mean, pretty soon it's going to become obsolete. And over-the-air updates are basically going to, dare I say, run out of gas because they're not going to be supported in the same way that these new processors are. I just wonder whether, we talk a lot about the shortage of chips to build cars today, and what a big issue that is. I just wonder about legacy capabilities of vehicles as in I'm talking like in 2 to 3 years, you may run into a situation where bang, you're done.
Well, and also remember, it's in the interest of automakers to want you to buy the next thing. They don't want your car to run forever. It's that whole planned obsolescence thing over again. And we have seen Tesla go back and offer upgrades for the Tesla Roadster, if you remember that car. Their first car in terms of battery packs and performance, there's little bits and pieces for those, hundreds or however many few thousand owners that are out there that want to do that. So there is some level of interest on a corporate level within Tesla to do things like that. But I think those are more passion projects. But at the end of the day, there's a lot less to break in these EVs in general. And they got to keep, the company busy and keep having revenue streams for people to come back. So it would be smart to have upgradability built in.
Mm-hmm.
This is a big issue for the industry because it operates on a totally different cycle than the chip industry does. If a chip's in production for 3 years, for the chip industry, that's a long time because they keep changing and upgrading and getting better all the time. I'm reminded this was back in the 1980s, NASA had to upgrade the space shuttle. Well, that was all built, it was designed in the 60s largely and started to get built in the 1970s. And it was built around the Intel 8088 chip, which was a very famous chip back in the day. But it had been out of production for years when NASA wanted to upgrade the shuttle. And it literally had to go on a scouring mission around the world to find brand new 8088 chips. And they wanted them in boxes. They didn't want somebody prying them out of an old Atari computer. And so the industry is facing this very same issue right now. In fact, I've heard horror cases of people with perfectly good Saturns in very good shape, not able to get a new engine computer. General Motors no longer supports that. Automakers are obligated to keep parts and service on hand for consumers for 10 years. After that, there's no more obligation. And that's going to be a huge issue when it comes to computer chips, especially. If you want to go and rebuild a carburetor on a 1913 car, you can do it because you can take a block of metal and machine it out and get everything. Who's got the capability of burning their own computer chips? I don't know anybody. I'm sure there's some out there that will do it on a custom basis for you, but you're going to pay through the nose for it. So what happens like on a 2001 BMW 7 Series with the original iDrive on it, and that goes out? I mean, you're flat out of luck. They don't make the chipset for that anymore. And so we're going to increasingly see this problem. Unless there's some way around it, I just don't see how the industry is going to handle it.
Yeah, plug and play would, if you have ready access and you continue to develop things where you can replace them, that would certainly solve that. But again, it's a question of will and does it make financial sense to do that? And by the way, that first gen iDrive 7 Series with the V12 is probably worth $2,500 anyway, whether it works or not doesn't. And it probably died because it was too expensive to keep up anyway. So is the iDrive going to kill it at the V12? Yeah. One of those things is going to run out.
Well, we've mentioned Tesla. So, John, you remember 2 weeks ago, I believe it was, that we had Sandy Monroe on the show, and he talked about him going on his drive, and he must have left the next day after the show was over because he's out there and did that, sat down as you told me, wasn't aware of this. He had a one-on-one with Elon Musk.
Personal interview with Elon Musk. That's really saying something. And had almost an hour with him too. So good for Sandy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's been really fun to watch. Are those your highest performing shows generally when he comes on?
Oh, yeah. Anytime you get Sandy on a show or you have anything that's dedicated to Tesla, the numbers are really good. The viewership numbers.
Chris, you're number two.
Yeah,
just don't let John tell you all about Sandy. All right, so I'm gonna end with one thing, and this is another surprising stat that I came upon. ExxonMobil lost $22.4 billion last year. This is the first time they've reported a loss like this since the 90s, and it's not just because of the pandemic.
What other factors were they attributing it to? I mean, because I could imagine that that's an awful lot of it. I've got a car in my garage that's still on summer tires. Didn't even bother.
Well, they're seeing a decided shift away from, people wanting to buy vehicles that fill up with gasoline. Edmunds came out with a report this week, basically saying that they see 2021 as being a significant shift in terms of people actually buying electric vehicles because of there'll be a greater opportunity to do so. I mean, let's see the quote from Jessica Caldwell is, after years of speculation and empty promises, 2021 is actually shaping to be a pivotal year for growth in the EV sector. So if you're owning ExxonMobil stock, you probably are saying it's not so good. So last year you may have started selling off, and so you end up losing.
Well, remember the big problem for the oil industry. There's just too much supply, and there's too much supply because those frackers have brought the United States back into being a net energy exporter, which is an incredible statement to say. And think about it. Venezuela's pretty much out of the picture in terms of oil production right now. Iran is constrained by all these sanctions and the like. I'm not sure where oil production stands in Iran right now, but it's probably not at the peak that it could be. What I'm getting at is you straighten out a few problems in those countries, they get back online, we're awash in even more oil. And then you have a pandemic and people are staying home and not driving as much, and demand goes down and prices go down with it. So that's why ExxonMobil, I think, ended up losing as much money as it did. And remember, just set electrics aside for the moment. If you just look at the regular piston engine fleet, it continues to get more and more efficient. I mean, not by whopping leaps and bounds, but the regulations are there, even just in the United States, where every year they get more and more fuel efficient. And so, Bloomberg Energy New Finance predicted in 2023, 2024, we're going to see yet another oil glut as more and more electrics come on stream. So, yeah, the future doesn't look bright for the oil companies in terms of selling oil as a fuel. I think oil for feedstocks, for plastics and other stuff is probably going to be really good to go for a long time, but not for fuel.
Well, there's even some question in terms of, using petroleum for plastics that, there's a move to decarbonize that as well.
Right.
So, it's just a big, huge move. And wasn't it that ExxonMobil was taken off the S&P 500 last year and replaced by Tesla? I mean, it's just it's an indication of something, I guess.
A changing world. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
real good.
That's all I got. That's all I got.
Hey, that's plenty right there. Chris, great to have you on the show again.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Chris.
Wonderful to see you both.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Gary, we'll do it again next week.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay. See y'all later.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey.
Visit our website, Autoline.tv, where you can watch us live Thursday afternoons. Get your daily fix with Autoline Daily and in-depth analysis and interviews with Autoline This Week. There's all that and much more at Autoline.tv.